head into the Ringerverse to stay up to date with all things superheroes and nerd culture entertainment. Hosted by a rotating lineup of superfans at The Ringer, including Mallory Rubin and Van Lathan, shows will provide instant reactions to blockbuster releases, insightful backstories on canon, and mind-bending theories, as well as fresh takes on the latest news and rumors. Check out The Ringerverse on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Visible. Maybe you've already let your New Year's resolution slip. We all have, but you can still make a 2 year's resolution with Visible. Right now, you can get a one-line wireless plan from Visible for just $20 per month for 24 months. 24 months is basically 4 Bachelor seasons. That could be 4 engagements, 4 broken engagements, so many other couples we didn't see them coming. It's really an eternity in Bachelor Nation. And that's unlimited 5G data powered by Verizon with no annual contracts. Switch now at Visible.com and use the code VISIBLE24. Don't miss out. Offer ends January 31st. New members only. Promotional rate with service on the Visible plan. For additional terms and network management practices, see Visible.com. This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. All right, it's official. I think I've discovered the ultimate coupling of all time. Like any good relationship, they really balance each other out. One is super sweet, and the other, well, they can be a little nutty sometimes. It is, of course, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, the perfect combination of peanut butter and chocolate. So perfect, some would call it true love. Find Reese's now at a store near you. Welcome to Bachelor Party. I'm Juliet Litman. I'm excited because I am joined today by my friend, Wesley Morris. Hello.
Hi, Juliet.
Oh my God.
How are you doing?
You're using your weird voice that you also use for your voicemail and with servers at restaurants. It's super weird. You just like drop a register.
I mean, it is early in the morning, and as I tell people when they get my voicemail, this is what I sound like when I wake up in the morning.
Okay.
I don't know what to say. It's early.
I'm so delighted to have you on the podcast. You were texting me about Emmanuel Acho on Monday night, and I was surprised because you don't watch The Bachelor. And I was like, this is great. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
I do not watch that show, but every once in a while I do.
You drop in.
The truth about me and my television consumption is basically that I'm a channel surfer. Before I decide to break, the way TV works now, I don't know how it works for you and for everybody else out there, but my relationship to it is everything is sort of cordoned off. And so I will begin my relationship with TV when I don't have an appointment by watching New York One for a little bit because I live in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And
so you have Spectrum then.
So I start, but I mean, it's really truly, I start at 1.
Sure.
I go up to 2, which is CBS. I go then to 3, which is TNT. Watch a little basketball for a little while.
Nice.
Or if there's a Mission Impossible movie on, I'll just stick with that for a minute. You go up to 4, and I think that's what's 4. 4
NBC.
Is that NBC? Okay.
Yeah.
5 is Fox. 6 is Nick at Night because I watch a lot of Friends and a lot of Mom.
Okay, what's on Nick at Night these days? That's an
Friends.
But Nick at Night is Viacom. Interesting that they have licensing up for that. They won't for long.
And then 7 is NBC. And so, or ABC.
7 is ABC, yeah.
ABC. So, I usually watch a little bit of Bachelor. I watch all the network shows at least for 5 to 20 minutes. Always. Like I've seen every network show Monday through Friday during this pandemic for at least 20 minutes every single week.
My God.
Or many weeks. I mean, most nights I read before I go to bed, but many other nights I'm watching TV. But before I go into the streaming apps, I watch my cable like a 90-year-old person.
Well, it's funny you say that. I have YouTube TV. I do not have cable anymore. YouTube TV is kind of pricey, but I do love it. I do channel surfing as well. On Saturday mornings, I wake up and I'm like, what movie can I watch on cable right now? And as a result, I've recently watched Crazy Rich Asians, which is a great movie. I really love it.
Julia, don't get carried away.
Sorry. It's a great cable movie.
It's fine. It's a great cable movie. Yes.
It's
a great
sort
cable
of
movie.
Where the rewatchables began. It's a great cable movie and it makes me very excited for In the Heights. But I like love channel surfing too. It also Like, is there a Chip and Joanna Gaines of that channel surfing? I don't think so. I
don't get up that high though. I do not get up that high. But maybe on YouTube TV, are you doing it a la carte that way? Is it just channels you want to watch?
No, they have like a set run. But this is like a hangover for me. It's like I used to, in like 2005, wake up and be like, what can I watch on cable? And I would go up to those channels. I would skip the networks and I would go all the way up.
Yeah. I mean, when I punch in a number, it's 406, which is the tennis channel. 300 or 301, which is ESPN and ESPN2. And then, oh shoot, of course I'm not going to remember it right now. I need the remote with me. I think it's 653 is TCM, Turner Classic Movies,
nice.
Which I watch. That's my CNN. I don't watch any news programs except for New York One.
Me neither.
And TCM is, I just want to know what's on. I'll watch like an hour or sometimes an entire movie, depending on where it is in the movie. Like, what was on last night? A National Velvet was on last night.
Oh my God. That was my favorite movie as a kid. I remember.
You stopped talking.
I rented it from my local video store and I just remember it like being by the door to return it, like, so I wouldn't forget. But I just loved National Velvet. And I was pretty into Shirley Temple movies too.
Yeah, National Velvet, really. I was captivated for a little while. It looked a little colorized. Like it was a little too bright for me. And I watched it for about 15 minutes and then I went and actually started watching what I turned on the TV to watch.
Which was what?
I wanted to watch part 4 of the Woody Allen, Mia Farrow thing. I also wanted to refresh.
We're not doing that here.
Oh no, well, we don't have to do it. But I will say, it's incredibly, incredibly convincing. It is very convincing. But I wanted to refresh my memory of what I'd watched on Tuesday with respect to The Bachelor. That was my main purpose in turning on my TV, watching the Woody Allen thing and watching that. And ABC did not make it easy. By the way, I just want to say I watched it on Hulu.
Yeah, I think they were pushing people to Hulu because Disney owns ABC and Hulu. So anyway, more on that in the future, I'm sure. The D'Amelio show and the Kardashians are moving to Hulu, so it's like going to be this bastion of reality TV in the future. I'm like kind of girding myself for it, but that's not why we're here right now. So did you watch the whole finale, and did you also watch the whole After the Final Rose? I watched all of the After the Final Rose, and I watched a little bit of the finale. How much had you seen before this? I watched a little bit. I was familiar with listening to your podcast. I mean, I've told you this many times. I do not watch this show. My pipelines for Bachelor knowledge come from you and John Caramanica, like of the New York Times, who writes occasionally about The Bachelor, but has a lot of feelings. And OG Bachelor Party guest, John Caramanica. You're one. And Jenna Wortham watches it occasionally too. I don't know how we have not talked about this season. We talked about it a little bit toward the end when things went, off the rails. Mm-hmm. But I know she's also a Bachelor watcher. Yes, she is. I think I once emailed her about it. Anyway, I'm just curious, like flying in on this, what did you think? Like, what was your reaction? It's funny. I don't typically ask people like, what did you think about this? But it's such like a mess. And I am so deep in like Bachelor thinking that I'm curious for like people's fresher perspectives. As a listener of this show, I sometimes do wonder about how things, I know what the problems are in the world. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's a way that the show itself seems shocked that there are repercussions for things that happen on its show. And I watched a lot of Unreal, and I felt like the way that show managed in its satire to create a bubble, like an actual hothouse, to grow these dramas among the contestants on these shows, while also being completely oblivious or willfully oblivious to what's happening beyond the walls that it is built for these productions. I just find that cognitive dissonance fascinating. Mm-hmm. So for me, if you're going to do all this touting of having this, we've got our first Black Bachelor, or, when Rachel Lindsay was the first Black Bachelorette,
they do all this patting on the back, but the bones of the show, it seems to me, are made in these manufactured dramas.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I feel like the show has no imagination for drama involving Black people that doesn't also involve racism.
Interesting.
Now, in this case, it wasn't that the show created this problem for its contestants. This woman, her name is also Rachel, correct?
Yes, correct.
This is a thing she did when she wasn't even on the show. This was, by the way, 3 years ago. In my mind, I thought this had happened 15 years ago.
Well, that's because Chris Harrison talked about it that way. He was like, 2018.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe.
things were different back then.
Yeah. I mean, I just had assumed this was way in the past. This happened like last week, basically. So anyway, I watched, I know enough. I know everything that happened. I've watched enough. I think the question that I have for you, Juliet, is, do these things make you as uncomfortable as they make me? I feel the whole thing stresses me out in a way that has nothing to do with race or racism. It's just watching people cringe and try to pretend that nothing is cringeworthy stresses me out.
A big part of the conversation around The Bachelor this season, at least on this podcast, but I think in general, is that it's not fun to like laugh at these people anymore.
Right.
There's no fun in the cringe. And I've been thinking a lot about the TV show Wipeout in my head as sort of like the absolute opposite of what's going on here.
Yes.
Wipeout is and also Floor is Lava, which is very much derivative of Wipeout. Those shows
I've seen that.
Thrive
I've seen a little bit
on
of
like
that.
a Floor is Lava or Wipeout or both.
Floor is Lava. Yeah.
Well, Wipeout, big on TBS, Channel 8. So
I've seen Wipeout. I've seen enough of Wipeout. It's like, it just seems like it hurts when they fall into the
Totally.
it just, they never discuss pain, but it seems like it hurts.
But it's like indiscriminate wipeouts, right? Literally. Like it's like anyone and everyone is fair game to laugh at them falling. And that is like, seems like such a luxury slogging through this season of The Bachelor.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, none of this is funny. This is really pointed of like, of how this problematic young white woman is given this. She's like a main character and you don't really want to watch her, but you have no choice. And it just feels like the absolute opposite of Wipeout. I'm just like, give me some mindless television where I can laugh and not feel bad about cringing at these people.
Yes,
but
please let somebody fall onto a giant inflated plastic ball.
I've never been so desperate for a banana peel gag, I'm just like, and so, I think that very frequently the after the final rose, Van and I discussed this. I love a reality TV reunion, often better than the show itself. And in The Bachelor's most not poignant, but like their most like punctuated moments is usually very hard to watch. I've been thinking about the Becca and Ari finale from a few years ago, where Ari breaks up with Becca on camera and like as like a real shithead move. Like they're engaged and he doesn't tell her and he blindsides her at this breakup and like one of their happy couple, quote unquote happy couple weekends. And this was like so much worse, but a lot of it has been made of the silences on the after the final rose.
Oh yeah.
That's like and there's some say that the filming of that was actually 6 hours. Some say, I also heard it was 3. Whatever it was much longer than
6 hours.
That's definitely possible, but yeah, I
you
don't
mean
know.
This one that we just watched with Matt and
yes.
Whoa.
Apparently. So there's a lot we didn't see, and they chose to use precious seconds on television to show silences, right? And to like show Emmanuel Acho being like, "Would you like to have one final embrace?"
Oh.
And no one moves.
Oh God, that was the creepiest moment of the whole. Of all. Just would you like to hug this woman that you clearly don't even have words for?
Yeah.
Read the room, sir.
Okay, so what'd you think of Acho? A lot of varied opinions. I'll just say my on the record opinion is I think he did a good job with the role he was dealt. But I'm curious what you think.
I admired his smoothness. I admired his presence.
His presence
not his
was
physical
commanding.
presence, but
his presence was commanding.
He had presence, right? But he did seem somewhat disconnected from. I felt like he was basically doing everything Chris Harrison would have done, with the exception of, identifying with Matt as Black men And then I think identifying with oh geez, what's the number
Michelle.
runner's up name? Michelle. Identifying with her as a Black person, but I think that those were nominal identifications and didn't lead to any sort of discursive revelatory connection between these two people. I don't know if he was in a difficult position in that he was meant to, like, he was filling in for Chris Harrison, but could only bring but so much of his feelings about. But see, I've read the book. I mean, the book, well, you can't see me, but you can see me, Juliet, but like, I'm pointing to where the book on my bookshelf. I've read Emmanuel Acho's book. I did it in about 3 hours, and I just feel like it's one of those things where I'm not surprised by the questions he actually asked, and I feel like his relationship to his Blackness is reading that book, it's so much about it's aggrieved in this sort of, he's discovered that there's a kind of Black grievance or that he can be aggrieved as a Black person. It's really interesting. And watching him talk to Matt and Michelle and Rachel too, obviously, he was fulfilling the host function, but not giving you the thing that, not giving me anyway, the thing that I wanted as a viewer, which is to see this rare thing happen, which is on in a space like this on national TV on ABC, which does have mixedish and Blackish, but doesn't have an all Black drama. And I could be wrong about that, but as far as I know, as a regular watcher of all the channels and all their programming, there's no Black drama on ABC. So this would be it.
Probably the closest
is Grey's, right?
Is Grey's.
Yeah.
But Meredith Grey is still the lead and the narrator of that show in the face of it. And she's as white as the day is long, like me.
But at least the show knows that.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it is true. I love Grey's Anatomy. Thinking about it makes me emotional.
Oh, I know.
So
you're its number one fan as far as I know.
Honestly, I like worship Shonda Rhimes. I think even if you don't like her work, I think she is worthy of idolatry, in my opinion. Anyway.
So I do think that there was a missed opportunity here, and yet I did think that there was something fascinating about the conversation that we saw that took place almost despite itself or in spite of itself.
So there's just it's just so complex. Like there's even if this really fell short in so many ways of being an actually productive hour of television. And that's kind of how I've been thinking about it. I was like, was this productive? Was this a good use of an hour? Because to say it was good or bad, I don't even know what that means with what was addressed. And it's undeniably a terrible season of The Bachelor. There was no character depth. There's no connection to these people. I think that off screen, I don't even know how to put it, but off screen developments so deeply overshadowed the season because there were so little substance in the season, and that's just undeniable. So I think we can just accept this was an all-time bad season of The Bachelor, and Matt got screwed over. This episode is brought to you by eBay Authenticity Guarantee. eBay knows that when it comes to jewelry, authenticity is the real gem. When you see the blue check mark that says Authenticity Guarantee, it means your next piece will be carefully inspired by jewelry experts and will always be worth its weight in gold. Whether you're looking to make a statement or build the perfect everyday look, eBay is making sure you get the real deal. With eBay Authenticity Guarantee, you can trust that jaw-dropping piece will always arrive jaw-droppingly real. Ensure your next purchase is the real deal. Visit ebay.com for terms. This episode is brought to you by Visible. Maybe you've already let your New Year's resolution slip. We all have, but you can still make a 2 year's resolution with Visible. Right now, you can get a one-line wireless plan from Visible for just $20 per month for 24 months. 24 months is basically 4 Bachelor seasons. That could be 4 engagements, 4 broken engagements, so many other couples we didn't see coming. It's really an eternity in Bachelor Nation. And that's unlimited 5G data powered by Verizon with no annual contracts. Switch now at Visible.com and use the code VISIBLE24. Don't miss out. Offer ends January 31st. New members only. Promotional rate with service on the Visible plan. For additional terms and network management practices, see visible.com.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
But
How do you account for that?
like what?
Like,
do you
what
mean?
explains it? Like, what explains that this guy got the worst Bachelor season?
I think one thing that we've taken for granted as Bachelor Nation is that when they recycle people through the system, you are given an origin story. So it's like when we go into these next seasons of The Bachelorette with Katie and with Michelle, there is some character development already. So even if we know very little about like Michelle's day-to-day life or Katie's day-to-day life, there's like a framework that you bring to the table of like Michelle was the runner-up and she's like the sweet teacher from Minnesota, and we really loved her relationship with her parents and their relationship with each other. And Katie is sex positive and she brought a vibrator on night one, and like, okay.
I've seen that. Yeah.
So Matt had none of that backstory like at all. And I now realize how much work their time as contestants does for advancing the narrative of the next season. I shouldn't have been so hard for me to put that together, but it was really clear that they didn't know how to like develop characters without the fabricated drama and trauma of being a contestant. So I think there's that. And then I think that you just cannot ignore that there's no one or not enough people behind the scenes who know how to tell the story of a Black man, or just like decide how to make this formerly anonymous Black man a central figure on television on Monday nights for 12 weeks out of the year. Like, that's just not, I think that like we joke about how stupid reality TV is, but there is real like, you know, like there is like real creative decisions that go into making good television shows.
It's an art form, obviously.
Yeah. And there was no one on the show who was equipped to do that. And so I think then Emmanuel Acho was asked to sort of like be the shepherd of like telling Matt's postscript. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this is that I think Emmanuel Acho is really interesting choice because he used this word and you've used this word, and there's a real emphasis on reconciliation.
Right.
And I, you know, you wrote a piece over the summer in the Times where you work. Check out Still Processing. New season starts today.
Thursday.
Yeah, but then this episode will be released. Check out Still Processing, the New York Times podcast with Wesley and Jenna Wortham. But you wrote about reconciliation should be televised, and you were not exactly prescriptive in what that should be, but like really interrogated and suggested that like the networks together do some kind of event on television that goes towards this work of not just like identifying the Black Lives Matter movement and systemic racism dating back to, 1619, but really talking about how I move forward in like concrete ways. And so I was curious, like how you perceive this through the lens of televising reconciliation.
I mean, I think in my, I took notes while I watched, and I wrote it in here somewhere. Anyway, I was immediately. Oh, okay. I wrote this is _, a sort of truth and reconciliation, and it is. And it didn't really hit me until Rachel comes out, and Emmanuel Acho he talks to her about what she did wrong, and then Matt. Wait, I can't remember if Matt is physically present for this. But when at some point, he's not there for this, but I felt like Acho's role with Rachel was to explain to America, I mean, as much for her sake as for his own way of looking at things, which, I mean, I can involve myself in this in a minute, but like basically what he wants America to understand is, there's a couple, like, I don't know if he made these things up on the spot, or whether he brought them with him as things he wanted to emphasize. But one of them was this idea that, history history is a thing you remember, and not all history is a thing you celebrate. Right? That's a version of it. I'm paraphrasing a thing that he actually said to Rachel, but as much to America.
And that quote I have seen circulate a lot on social media. He had a few quotes. That one and which Van and I discussed, which I'm curious for your take on as well, where he says, "I'm aware that by being on television today, I could be the only Black person that some people encounter." And I think those are the two moments.
That one I don't really even get. I mean, I understand what he actually means, but why? What's okay? All right.
Let's come back to that. But I will just say that I think very much those are the two quotes that have been circulating as a result of what, he delivered them in ways that they became like Instagram quotes, essentially.
Right, exactly. And he isn't even really saying them to her. Although it was interesting to watch her, kind of him, you know what I mean? Like she was like, yes, that is what I've been trying to say about myself.
She read his book, which I know because she Instagrammed it with a green tea in her hand, which I found incredibly shallow and disingenuous. But
she and I have something in common.
I think a lot of people have read his book. Emmanuel Acho
it's a bestseller. It's a bestseller. Yes, it was a huge hit.
I just want to be clear. I like Emmanuel Acho. I don't know a ton about him, but I was like, I'd like to spend more time with this man. I'm going to watch more of his web series. But anyway, carry on.
I did not close that book feeling that way about him.
Okay.
I didn't dislike him, but I mean, I went in neutral, came out neutral.
I think he's got a real screen presence in a way of a natural performer.
He does. I would say that his very expensive Isaiah suit,
that did not fit at all.
That kind of compromised his screen presence a little bit, and somebody has to find him a pair of socks.
The rise of the turtleneck underneath the blazer is just not something I'm interested in. It's like, I need a Sex and the City episode to address this. It's rampant and bad. No,
I will say, just parenthetically about tailoring, I'm a lucky person. I get to have my suits made. Wonderful experience. When I first started seeing my tailor,
do you go to Hong Kong for that, or you got someplace local?
I just go to Midtown Manhattan.
Nice.
And a place in Brooklyn. But one of the things that both these tailors when I'm getting fitted, he's like, they're both adamant about things they will not be doing. And one of those things is giving me a tight ass suit. Like they won't give me a suit that because a lot of guys come in here and they want to show off their bodies. Well, you should be wanting to show off a suit that fits and not something that's going to rip when you sit down. And that's just the truth. It's just true. You don't want a thing that looks like it's going to split open. And that was a little bit stressful for me watching Emmanuel Acho.
I just also was like, does he like how this fits? I was like, is this the look that he wants? I don't know. I was also like, is this spandex? Because it was so confusing that other material could hug his body that way.
I wondered if the company that makes that suit has a couple
stretchy materials.
Yeah, I think they have I wonder if they do.
Let's get back to Reconciliation Televised.
Yes, sorry.
No, I wanted to discuss this as well, but I this is something you've committed a lot of time to. And as I was watching, it occurred to me that I was like, this is weirdly maybe a step in the direction of what Wesley has been calling for.
This is exactly a version of what that would look like. I think the weird thing is that it feels to me, and I wonder if many other people feel this way. And I think Acho sort of, the other thing I was going to say that he brings up in talking about what Rachel did was that he wanted to make it clear that what was this term? A racial insensitivity. Oh yeah. A racial insensitivity is not the same as racism. There was no racist intent with Rachel. But I mean, he wanted to make that clear. And it's a distinction that I find worth making in terms of what is an actual, harm being done to people and what is...
It's malice aforethought.
Right, exactly. If you tell this person that if you basically do to Rachel what was done to Rachel, which is hey, you were partaking in a pretty racist event, do you understand why that was racist, or like what about that event would be perceived by people to be an act of racism or like a perpetuation of racism?
And I thought she actually had a genuine and again constructive response where he was like, you knew you were going on the show. Did you worry about these photos?
Yes.
And she was like, to be honest, it never occurred to me that they were a problem. And that is probably like as honest as it gets from her, right?
Yeah, but I would say that there was a better question to be asked, right? And this is the thing that I think is lost in this conversation about, because at some point when Matt comes out, Acho's other job is to be like, well, like, is there no forgiveness in your heart? Is there no way to see that this person might not be as bad as you think she is? Is there any way that you could see her doing this work and then just finding a way to be with her again? Mm-hmm. And the real question there, and the thing that I'm almost certain Matt James is thinking is, well, it's not really about her. It's not about the work she's going to do, because the real question is, what kind of world did she live in? Mm-hmm. She wasn't the only person in that photograph. These are like some of her girlfriends, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think it's like her like sorority sisters or whatever.
Right. So, what are those other women saying about this event? Are they still speaking to her? Is she still speaking to them?
Yeah. And also her family, I think is like Trump supporters. Like her father, his donations, they're public, and he like donated to like Win Red or whatever. And she's from, as we all learned from watching Election Returns in our 1 week of watching Jake Tapper and Abby Phillip.
Is it Forsyth County?
She's from Forsyth County.
Oh, no. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I just I think of Jake Tapper and Abby Phillip every time I think about Rachel now, because like I would have no context for Forsyth County were it not for this, this agony awaiting the Georgia returns.
I've spent some time in Georgia, and I've been to Forsyth County. Oh boy.
And that's where she's from. And I'm glad that you bring this up. Like, who are the people in her life and like, what is her world like? Because I think that another problem I think systemically with the show is that they don't have enough people behind the scenes to be like, it's not just the problem that we're not giving Matt this information that she was in these photos, but giving him the context of where she's from and how to consider a life with her would be to consider a life among a really unwelcoming and racist family and world, probably.
But Juliet, where's he from?
He's from Raleigh. He's from Raleigh. Charlotte.
Okay.
Raleigh.
All right. So
I said Charlotte, and I've been told he's from Raleigh. His handle is Matt James 919. I've been told 919 is the exchange for Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay. So I feel like, and you and I have both, well, I have been in relationships with people of other races. I think it's important to, I don't want to throw your business all out in the street. My business is fine. My business is fine, but you do you.
Okay, carry on.
I feel like there is a due diligence. I know Matt James can't be responsible for finding out the backgrounds of each and every one of these women.
No.
But when you get down to the last 3 or 4, aren't there some questions you want to ask?
Well, he said he didn't ask the questions. Emmanuel Acho got that out of him, which was crazy.
This is crazy. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
Of course you're not ready to get married. You're not asking the real world questions, man.
These are the questions. And like when he says to her, I have a lot of sympathy for Matt James. I truly do. Those silences, however manufactured they were by ABC, felt real.
Oh, yeah.
And the anguish on his face. He looked like he'd aged 5 years.
Yeah.
And that beard. The beard, to me, was the most important development in that hour of TV.
Okay, let's get into it.
I don't know where it came from.
A man who, just want to note, wrote extensively and beautifully, made me cry about his mustache that he's still sporting. So carry on.
I just feel like this beard is such a signifier of simultaneous resistance and anger, but also a little bit of shame. Mm-hmm. It's not a kept beard, right? They put a lot of oil in it before he went out, so it's like it had a gleam to it. Mm-hmm. But that is that is not a glamour beard. That is a resistance beard. That is a beard of contrition. I mean, as much as one can like wear a hair shirt on their face, like the beard to me signified this combination of chagrin and a like a blackness that was resistant to whatever the person to his right was offering him, basically.
Right.
That night. And I feel like there's something about the one of the unfortunate things about racism is that it makes you aware of your blackness in a negative way, as opposed to it being, I mean, I'm not saying this is true of Matt James, but like in the narrative of the show, it seems to me that like his blackness becomes an issue when there's racism introduced.
Right.
And the way that he handles this breakup with Rachel is, as a black man breaking up with a white woman on the issue of what Emmanuel Acho would say a racial incident, right? A racial insensitivity. And that to me is not the relationship I think black people should be wanting to have with their blackness. Like either you have no relationship with it, or it's forged in something other than, you know, this negative encounter with your black self. But anyway, he is talking to her about her not understanding him as a black man. But I would like to know, I mean, you've watched more of the show you've watched the show. I didn't watch very many hours of this at all. How many conversations were they having about his being a black man in the first place?
I mean, on the show?
Yeah.
They did like a perfunctory sit down with Chris Harrison in the season premiere, which was horrible and just incredibly, not just cringeworthy, but like offensive.
How so?
He was just talking about, like I said, it was like perfunctory. And it was sort of like bizarre to have that conversation with Chris Harrison, where he was like, you know, I'm the first Black Bachelor, I'm biracial. And it just felt really shallow and just like I said, sort of obligatory and of no depth. And I think that like maybe I'm like, wow, Emmanuel Acho, good job. It's just because it's like so much better than where we started the season. However, this season has been a tire fire, and the fact that we're at this place is like insane. But that was really rough. I think the other thing that is too bad is that Matt also said that he talked about race with the other women of color on the show, but not with the white women, which I thought was interesting. And by that,
when did he say that?
And you know, three of he said that with Emmanuel Acho. Emmanuel Acho was asking him about like I think it was Emmanuel Acho. Maybe it was on GMA if you missed it, and he's talking to Michael Strahan. But
yeah, I don't think he said that to Acho.
Oh, then it was to Michael Strahan on GMA, which by the way, Matt just seemed like completely just, it's like he had survived like Dresden. I mean, it was just really, it was really sad. I really feel for him. I hope he's okay. Anyway, he said that he didn't ask enough questions and he really only talked about like race as with the women of color and not with the white women. And I forgot why I brought this up. Oh, you're asking about how much they talked about Matt's blackness. They really didn't talk about it a lot. And so when they did, it was like not really about his, but like this woman, they did try to talk about hair, which I found to be like white people watched like a few like things about blackness. Like they watched like a few documentaries or whatever and saw the song from Sesame Street and decided to like make that a talking point because Chelsea tells a story about her cutting. She was a woman who had a shaved head, and she talks about shaving her head. Apparently Matt had responded to that moment by talking about his own like relationship to his hair, but they didn't show it. And then when his brother arrives this week, his brother like is like asks him about his waves and like looks at his hair. And I was just like, okay, so what are they trying to like message to us here by showing that like one small moment between Matt and his brother? And so I felt like
wait,
that
was the
like,
brother surprised that Matt had waves, or like Matt was doing a good job at maintaining his waves?
Good job maintaining them.
Okay. I mean, because it's a lot of work as a former waves haver.
I can't speak to that, but I just as a viewer of the show, as a white viewer of the show, was like, this feels to me like how they're trying to like account for Matt being black without being like Matt is black. And maybe I'm reading too much into that. I don't know, but that was sort of my perception of it. And I think that a lot has been said by other people that they try to portray Matt as a Black man in a non-threatening way. So it's sort of like as the first Black Bachelor, sort of like, how do you have a Black Bachelor that like white America is comfortable with? And so that really sacrificed a lot of probably what could have been more meaningful conversations. Because if he was talking about being in a biracial or a Black relationship with these women, like, why didn't they show that? That's like really, that would have been substantive. That would have been showing who these people are.
But I think, I mean, getting back to this idea of truth and reconciliation, I think one of the things that a show like The Bachelor has the potential to do that is potentially harmful is that it gets at the thing that a movie like Get Out is trying to like wave its arms about with interracial relationships, right? Which is that there's always this concern that there is a thing lurking. There's another shoe that's going to drop, that, you know, you're going to find something out about this woman that you're about to marry or getting very serious with. And that thing is going to definitely be about your Blackness and either her secret opposition to it or something in her past that is an affront to it, or, you know, even worse, which is what happens in Get Out. But like the thing about Get Out that's so important to even, you know, just think about culturally is it really does tap into this societal paranoia about what goes on in interracial relationships. Because in a lot of cases, you know, one of the hurdles you have to get past is where the two of you stand on your respective races. Right. And I mean, it's not a thing that has to happen. I mean, it's a thing that happens in intraracial couples too. But sure, it's definitely a thing that's important. It's definitely a thing in the United States that's gonna come up in all likelihood, especially in 2020, 2021, about where the two of you stand on X issues. And also, where do your respective families stand? Where do your friends stand? What are you marrying into? What are you engaging with when you know, get engaged to somebody?
Right. And he clearly, he knew he wasn't ready. His mom showed him he wasn't ready to be engaged, and it's clear he wasn't asking the right questions. BT Dubs, this is a total side note, but like he was like rubbing his mom's leg the way that he does with all the other women. Did you catch that? It was super weird.
I did not notice that.
It was weird.
Things like that just made me uncomfortable. Okay.
It was weird. It was awkward.
Is his mother Black?
She's white.
Okay.
Her name is Patty.
Okay.
Patty James, I think. His father is Black. His father was on last week, and it was an exploitative scene where they made his father seem like this like absentee dad, and
oh Jesus Christ,
it was rough. Me and Rachel talked about it. Check out the episode.
I mean, why is Chris Harrison going to be the person who loses his job over this? Why is he the only person who might lose his job? He's not going to lose his job. He's not going to lose his job.
Not positive he will come back in the same degree. I don't know what will happen. Honestly, I don't think they know. They got a mess. I want to come back to the comment that Emmanuel Acho made, where he said that when he's on television, he's aware that he might be the only Black person that some people encounter on a given day, which Van found to be outrageous. I'm curious what your response is to that, and I'll tell you why I ask.
It struck me as being gratuitous. And I don't exactly know what that was intent. I mean, I think that comment was made in the context of a very classical Black person dilemma, which is that, you know, as a Black person that you know, it's as old as freed Black people. It's as old as enslaved Black people. Your comportment in a white country, in a white space, in any sort of white environment, your comportment matters. Your comportment is probably the thing that is going to keep you more alive than anything. Then, you know, it's directly proportional to your Blackness, your comportment, and it's the thing that's going to keep you from, you know, at the turn of the 19th century into the 20th. It was a thing that could potentially keep you from being lynched, right? I mean, there wasn't a whole lot that could. But it's this ongoing question that Black people bring with them when they succeed, right? Which is, how palatable am I going to make myself to the people around me? not only in order to advance, but in order to live,
Right.
And that is where that conversation started. And Matt James talks about that. And then Acho is sort of, he receives the baton from Matt James, and he takes it to this place where, like, I mean, it's not unreasonable to think that you are representing Black people in any given space you go into where there aren't that many Black people. But what exactly was Van's?
Well, I bring it up not to like say I disagree with Van or you.
No. I'm actually just curious.
Van was saying that he was like, I just sort of like reject that. He's like, Barack Obama was the president for 8 years. And it's like, go outside. Like, this is America. Like, talk and encounter a Black person. And sort of rejected that notion that could be true for a lot of people.
I mean, I hear that. I guess there's probably a better way for Emmanuel Acho to have put that. Because it did sound like one of his functions is, at least as far as he imagined it for himself, or as far as, he was directed into taking things, was to kind of conciliate, and to, to be a sort of palliative for skeptical white people, concerned white people, white people who don't exactly understand what was so bad about going to, an antebellum plantation in antebellum, antebellum era costumes and taking selfies. It just, he was meant to sort of defuse the situation in some ways by saying things like that.
Right. And we're going to come back to like what's next for televised reconciliation. But I just say that I bring it up because I do think that reminded me, that comment, I think that, I totally, the sort of a commentary about specifically how Black people are in white spaces and how they interact with white people, I don't think I can speak to, obviously, in the same way. But it did remind me of how warping this show is. And it's probably like specific also to people who cover it like me. But it's so much warps my standards of like aesthetics in a way where I'm just sort of like, I forget that like most people are not as beautiful as the people who are on The Bachelor. And it just sort of reminded me, not that necessarily Emmanuel Acho is right or whatever, but just that like people do watch this show, especially in the last year, like almost in isolation, where it's sort of like this becomes representative of humans and it because they're as like a proxy for actually interacting with humans,
right?
And it's so false and so warping that I thought that like that kind of like resonated with me, because it reminded me of how much this like peddles a picture of something, and that picture is usually so false. And so it's like the way that the show chooses to portray, I think, women in particular is dangerous.
Sure,
yeah, I don't know. That's sort of a convoluted response, but that's what it reminded me of.
Well, I think that to the extent that I'm inclined to give Emmanuel Acho the benefit of the doubt on what was, I would say a fairly benign observation.
But it's something that like white people can be like, you're right, good point. Or like, it's just sort of.
No. I'm with Van on that. But I would say conversely, I think the thing that is like getting Asian Americans in this country, or Asian people Asian people, period, American and otherwise, the thing that is getting them murdered and spit on and slurred is a complete lack of exposure to them. A complete otherization and service orientation toward them. Where our popular culture, our American popular culture, has no place for Asian people. Right. And I think that the idea that, to the extent that this stuff is powerful and that it means something, these questions of representation, I think seeing no Asian people in your TV diet it makes it so much easier to think that they're that they're like these aliens, when somebody with the power of a president or a cable news show can demonize them in a way and make other people think, susceptible people think that these people are here to take something, to destroy things, to infect people. That the reason you're suffering is because, I mean, it's terrible. And part of the antidote to that is just seeing these people in your lives, if they're not in your friend networks or in your family, like having them be in your cultural diet. I just feel like it's terrible. And I think that, I mean, I don't know if I feel like that ship has kind of sailed with Black people in some ways. I mean, it's kind of, to Van's point, like, where you been?
I know. I know. And that's part of the Bachelor is just this weird, like, other planet that, like, for some reason, so many people visit every week. It's super weird to think about how the show is like this force on network television.
But I think the thing that's really powerful about it is that, and the thing that makes it, I don't know if necessary is the right word, but I just find that it's been 25 seasons of this show, correct?
Of The Bachelor, yes. And I think 15 or 14, 16 or 15 Bachelorette seasons. I can't remember. And
they just reinforce the same problems that have existed in this country since its essential inception.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not a show that from its outset or at any prior point really before the last 3 or 4 years has felt any responsibility to change people's ideas about these issues, these questions, these like how Black people are worthy of and capable of romance, that Asian people have libidos too, that, you know what I mean? That, you know, that all of the races are all attractive and, you know, desirable and sexy. And the show is not about race, but of course it is.
It's not up to the task. I think that's obvious, right? And like, or it hasn't been. And I don't know how to square that because I'm just like, it's similar to the NFL. I'm just like, The Bachelor cannot handle the weight of race and reconciliation. I think that Emmanuel Acho tried.
But yeah, I hear that, but I don't know. But see, this is the thing that winds up happening, right?
I don't mean to let him off the hook. I'm just saying.
No. I know. But I just feel like the thing that also sucked about Emmanuel Acho coming on and doing maintenance work, janitorial services for this show, is that it doesn't exonerate the show, but guess what the show gets to do at the end of that After the Rose
it's
episode,
like, look,
right?
We're doing the work.
We've not only that, but like we've got 2 Bachelorettes in a row coming. We're not even going to have a Bachelor season for a couple of years.
No, they will. They will have the Bachelor.
They'll still find a way. Okay.
They're adding this in. Yeah.
Okay.
They would never give the Bachelor. It's a cash cow.
But I would say that there is the show itself. What is the show itself going to do to save itself from itself in so many ways, right? Because they could have found those pictures.
Yeah. Well, they might not want to find those pictures because there's some people that think they just don't want to find them, but I don't know. I don't know if the show does, honestly. I think it needs a real overhaul behind the scenes, and it needs.
But that's been true for years, right?
Yeah.
I
have many ideas what the show does. We've talked about
this.
I've got a lot of ideas, yes, but they just need to inject some true reality into it. You can still have the fantasy. No reality show is truly reality, except for like, I don't know. I can't even think one off the top of my head, but they just need to inject something more realistic from 2021 into it. But Wesley, what happens next for televised reconciliation? Because I'm invested in this. I think that you're right. And I think it's a really intriguing idea. And I actually do appreciate that The Bachelor set forth sort of a kernel of an idea of how to execute what you wrote about. So what happens next?
Well, I mean, I think there are 2 things, right? Like, I feel like the 2 big, I mean, I don't know if they're the 2 big television events of the last couple of weeks, but
they are.
I think that between Meghan Markle's and Prince Harry's Oprah interview, which, I mean, Oprah did a lot of the, she did similar signposting to what Emmanuel Acho did, but she was more expert at it because, I mean, she's more experienced at this than he is at this point.
Career of experience. I will say Oprah was absolutely crushed it in many ways. But like one thing I really like love when it surfaces on television and in pop culture is when it's very clear that experience pays off. Where it's like Oprah is not just like some rando friend. I don't know a ton about how this came to be, but you could like probably make the case that like Oprah has been working on sources for years, like working towards that. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to give her credit as a journalist and like someone who's like cultivated these relationships. Is just what I'm trying to say.
But she does all of the work on the back end or on the front end, so that when she's in situ, so to speak, all she's really doing is asking these very obvious questions and then reacting as hugely as possible. She's telling the audience how to feel about these things that they might not be sure how they should feel about, right? You know, I just the telegraphing of the thing. I mean, in my piece, she is the person that I
wrote Oprah.
She is the person who I think is best, you know, based on our relationship with this person and her own relationship to what a truth and reconciliation conversation should how it should proceed. But I also think that she just has this facility with all kinds of people, whether she likes them or not. And she is open to hearing what people have to say, either to enlighten or unburden or, you know, explain themselves. I think the questions that she asks Matt and Rachel about their relationship are just so much different than what we got the other night, because I think she has a lifetime of asking these sorts of questions under her belt. Now, it's entirely possible Emmanuel Acho spends the rest of his life now doing a kind of televised relationship counseling, right? But the one thing that conversation with first with Michelle and then with Rachel and then with Matt and then with Rachel and Matt, what that pointed to me was, you know, this is what a kind of there's a thing that happened, right? There's an acknowledgement that the thing that happened was wrong. That's the truth. And then you get the aggrieved party and the offending party together to talk about how to go forward. And that's the reconciliation part. And so in that sense, this After the Rose ceremony televised event is exactly the sort of thing that I think televised truth and reconciliation looks like on a much grander, deeper scale. But you know, it's these little incidents like this that break people's hearts nonetheless, right? If, you know, this was enough for this guy to just be like, I can't do this. And it was enough, you know, what happened to Harry and Meghan was enough for Meghan to want to leave the empire or to to advocate for herself to get out of there. And I do think that, you know, the ways in which we as Black Americans are marrying into, and not just Black Americans, all Americans who don't want to deal with a denial of assorted legacies in this country. Or if you're in England, but you know, it's important that she's an American, right?
Yeah.
It's important that she's an American who will not be putting up with it. I can get this here.
Right. Seriously.
I'm not going to England. I'm not marrying into that. I can marry into that right here.
Well, what she can get here that she can't get there is she can get the celebrity on her own terms here that she cannot get there, because the royal family will always be the top celebrities in England, at least for as long as the monarchy
Is that
exists.
a cynical view of this? Or, I mean, I'm not saying that you're being cynical, but I mean, is that a cynical way to look at this? Which is that ultimately the other thing that we're talking about is a power struggle between the royal family and this woman.
I think to not acknowledge that she had ambitions beyond being a figurehead, like sort of second tier figurehead in the English monarchy is to ignore her very obvious ambition. And I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging that. So if there's a power struggle there, it wouldn't surprise me. But she clearly wanted to push the envelope with what the royal family is and who she is as the public figure from the beginning. She Their wedding was very different than Will and Kate's. I mean, she had a gospel choir.
There was no choir at Will and Kate's wedding.
Yeah, and you want to know whose wedding was way more fun, seemingly, to attend? Meghan and Harry's. I mean, I don't know. The austerity of Westminster Abbey doesn't do it for me personally. The pomp and circumstance of a global event does. I love a royal wedding for that reason, because I like a global event. But I don't know. So I think, I don't know if it's cynical to say that she can have the same level of fame in the US that having to be part of the royal family, but I think it's okay to acknowledge her ambition to be famous and to be big.
Right. Can I ask another question before we go? Was Matt's line a thing? Did that become a thing when Acho asks her? I don't know if this is what he says after Acho asks for the hug. Requests them to hug. I mean,
horrible.
But at some point in that area of the broadcast, Matt says the following: "I don't want to be emotionally responsible for your tears."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only time I thought about letting my eyes well up was right there, because
that's
deep and true.
I would say that was incredibly honest. I think that Emmanuel Acho's lines were delivered for Instagram specifically, and Matt, I think, is sorting through how he feels about a lot of this, and that was really honest. And it doesn't surprise me based on what we do know about Matt, which is it does not seem like Matt is looking for a really heavy relationship right now. Everything I know about him seems like he likes to have fun, and I do not blame him for that at all. And I think that gets to the heart of a lot of this, what Van and I were joking about, this quote unquote doing the work is Matt's I don't have work to do, you do. So I'm not taking that on. And then of course, whatever the work is, we can both seriously and joke about. But I that did not become a thing. And I think it did not become a thing because it's too real. It's not easily packaged up for an Instagram quote. It's not easily packaged up for explaining the way forward on reconciliation. It's so much realer than history is meant to be remembered, some history is meant to be remembered, not celebrated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, reconciliation, just to be clear for people who think that, I know you don't think this, Juliet, but I just in saying, in explaining why I think that line is so powerful is that, and useful, is that reconciliation isn't about forgiveness, right? Mm-hmm. It's about reconciling that this thing happened, and what we are reconciling to do is move forward. Mm-hmm. Maybe even together, but not necessarily, but it's moving forward. And what he was not letting her do was, he wasn't letting her be exonerated for what she had done. Right? It doesn't, the work doesn't end with this conversation. The work begins with this conversation.
Right.
Right. And I'm not responsible for whatever this is right here. I'm not going to let you faint your way out of this problem, cry your way out of this problem, quit your job your way out of this problem. You got to do the work. And I don't even care if you do it. I'm over here.
Yeah. She's just sort of I'm tapping out, and I would too.
I'm reconciled.
I bet her family and her friends are a problem for him. And I bet that.
See, Clado. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. If you want to hear more from Wesley, check out Still Processing, new season right now. Wesley, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. And
oh, sure.
Also check out his, we'll put it in the show notes, but definitely go back and read his piece from July about reconciliation and how to televise it. And I will be back on Monday. I think we're going to talk a little F1, Drive to Survive, the Netflix show that I love so dearly. It's coming back.
Oh my God.
Talk about racism.
Jesus Christ.
But you want to know what? Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest celebs we have. So I'm excited to talk about it. And yeah, old structures. F1 is a whole thing. But
I don't even know what to do with that.
Great show. We will discuss it. And Wesley, thank you so much. And Matt, thinking of you and hoping that you are having a good day. Thanks so much, everybody.
Me too. Good luck on your journey, Juliet.
I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work.